What is your worst first date story? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I met a guy on Tinder, and we spoke at length on Snapchat for weeks. I was so excited to meet him. I took him for a beer at a local quiet and intimate brewhouse. He showed up drunk and opened with a commentary about how I'll be fun as I am large-chested and 4'9", and thus a walking tit job. He yelled anti-Asian slurs across the bar when a minor fender bender happened just outside the pub. He told me in heavy graphic detail about his morning bowel movement's liquidity. He gave me the explicit recounting of his first time going down on a woman on her period. He ended the evening by yelling at me when I said I was going to call it a night. Story 2. It was a long list of things about what not to do, basically. I can live with going to a fast food restaurant. The plan was to go grab something and take it to a park anyway, since the one around us had a nice picnic area. But first up was the shitty attitude towards the poor girl who took our order. Trying to order for me, despite knowing nothing about me at the time, also didn't help. Then he found out my hobbies included nerdy stuff like video games and comic books, and decided the usual backhanded compliments about how I'm not like other girls and how rare it is to find a girl who likes the same stuff he does was a good way to make conversation. The jackass even tried testing me on random shit. As an added bonus, he even pulled out pictures of random anime women to show me how I should dress if I wanted to be with him in the long term. Yeah, the bar was so low that even hell was above it, and he still that badly. Needless to say, there was no second date. Story 3. I went to pick her up. She insisted on driving her car instead. Within 20 minutes, she ran a stop sign and got us T-boned. She tried to beg the other, completely not at fault, driver to not call the police, which of course made him call even faster. She then confesses to me that she doesn't have an active driver's license and was borrowing her friend's car. So why did she insist on driving when I was already planning on driving? Once the cops arrived and I was assured that I was in the clear, I got the hell out of there. Story 4. Not my stories, but 2 from friends. Female. Handsome guy asks her to go out to dinner. She gets dressed up. He shows up in casual clothing and takes her to the fresh market for a food sample tasting event. They wandered around getting free samples. She called me to pick her up. We laughed the whole way home. Male. On a dating app, he finds a match. They chat a few times and arrange to meet for a meal. She's 20 minutes late. They greet each other. She sits down and proceeds to open her handbag and pull out a puppet and seat it on the table. It was the puppet's birthday. 2 dates in one, first and last. I laughed until I cried. In fact, I am laughing now just typing the story. Story 5. He got his car towed after I told him to not park in that specific lot next to the place we were heading into. Proceeded to get trashed after we discovered his car got towed at the bar I was working at during the time. 86 feet die, the owner. I bought him an Uber home. He told me he loved me as he was getting inside the car. Uber driver called me and said to never request a ride for someone else without telling the driver, because he, my date, was a dick. Dude got home and then proceeded to send me selfies of himself taking a shit. I deleted Tinder after that. Story 6. It was normal at first. We went to an improv show, went for a walk and got sushi at a restaurant, but that's where the night turned. She started telling me about her husband and their poly lifestyle and how she was seeing 4 or 5 other guys at the time, then started talking about anal very loudly. Other tables were looking at us. I wasn't feeling it as a monogamous person, but saw it through to the end. When we were finished with our meal, her husband picked her up. It was a surreal experience. If you are poly, please put that in your profile and make it evident before going on a date. Story 7. Guy lied about being a lawyer. Also lied about where he lived, said it was within the downtown area. I was so distracted with finishing work emails before our big date that I ended up realizing the Uber had taken me at least 30 minutes out of the city in an area I was not familiar with. I still naively thought it might be an under-the-radar nice restaurant that was in the suburbs. The address was not a restaurant like he mentioned. It was directly to his house. I stupidly still entered the house because I still thought there might be a restaurant inside or behind the large gate. I immediately realized what was going on and left. There are so many ways this could have gone wrong. Showered 2 times that night from feeling creeped out. Story 8. I am probably going to trigger a few people, but here I go. Shortly after completing my undergraduate, I began using Tinder to meet single girls in my area. I matched with this girl who looked cute in the pics, and we decided to meet up for some burgers at the Habit. She asked if I could pick her up. She lived like 30 minutes from me, so no big deal. I arrived at her place right on time with the sun about to set. The front door opens, and out of the front door, I see one of the fattest girls I have ever seen. My jaw dropped, and a part of me really wanted to peel out and just block her on Tinder. But my inner gentleman said no, and I decided to stick around and move forward with going out for some burgers with her. I was driving a Mustang GT, and these cars aren't exactly spacious, so imagine her trying to get into my car and struggling to close my door because her body is sticking out of the seat. I awkwardly smiled at her, and right away she could tell I wasn't comfortable. She said, "I wasn't what you expected, huh?" I said, "No, not all." And she said, "Yeah, those pictures were old." I agreed and proceeded to drive to the Habit. On the way there, she started to go off about some personal issues and told me that she recently stopped talking to this guy because he raped her. I asked her if she filed a police report, and she said no, and that she hooked up with him after he raped her. I told her that doesn't make sense because why would she agree to continue seeing someone after they raped her? And she said, had feelings for him. I tried to change the topic because I was feeling very uncomfortable. I literally just met this girl, and she is spilling all these personal details that I really don't want to know. We arrived at the Habit at our burgers, and after a painful half hour, I drove her back home. She tried to kiss me, but I told her I wasn't feeling it and said my goodbyes. She messaged me later that day apologizing for misleading me with her photos. I wished her good luck and hoped that she sorts out personal issues and proceeds to block her. Story 9. Well, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I used to get bad earaches. When I would get them, my mom would put drops in my ears with cotton balls and let me sleep on the couch downstairs in the living room. I don't know why I slept down there, but she thought it might help or something. Anyways, one night during one of these earaches, as I was semi-awake and was looking at one of my mom's old antique lamps she had on a side table. As I was watching it through my pain, I saw it slowly float up and begin to move across the living room into the dining room. I, of course, was so scared as to why a lamp would be floating, I quickly put my head under the blankets, shut my eyes, and prayed for sleep. I remember being so scared, finally drifted off to sleep, and morning came. I was awoken by my mother asking me why I moved the big heavy lamp from the living room end table to the dining room table. I was so freaked I didn't tell her for a week, and of course she never believed me. Story 10. We went out to dinner, and at one point she said she was going out to her car to smoke pot and also grab a Thich Nhat Hanh book to show me. Before she left, she dropped a rock on the table. When she got back, she asked if the rock spoke to me. I was surprised and said something like, "No, what was it supposed to say?" She said it was so funny that I said that even though she obviously didn't find it funny at all and was in fact rather serious about the whole rock thing. Later, she looked up at me and said, "You look just like my mom at 16 years old. And I wonder what she's trying to tell me, because everything is a projection, right? As if I was not real or something. I don't know." I was like 35 too. I realized I needed to do first dates in a more casual, time-limited setting, but then the pandemic started. Story 11. We had been texting, and I told him that I don't like PDA on a first date. Guy proceeds to try to touch my back, leg, hand, and then, "I love you." Wanted to walk me to my car, and I said no. "Can I get a hug?" "No." "Dude, we've only been talking for a week, chill." Told him it wasn't gonna work out, and surprisingly, he was super chill about it. Or the time this guy invited me to the bar and he invited all his friends. His friends were like, "If you heard our name, we're gonna have problems, ha ha ha," in their drunken stupor. Well, that name isn't what he told me. Think Mike versus Patrick. Anyway, I'm not down for alcoholics, and the name thing weirded me out. Paid for my shit and bounced hard. Never messaged him again. Story 12. This was one of those situations where there's flirtation for years, and he finally asked me on a date. Driving home, his car got stuck in the snow. He got out and started pushing it, and then came back to the window and said he needed to use the bathroom. My house was a few minutes away on foot, so we left the car and walked to my place. He was in my bathroom for over an hour, left the bathroom, and told me not to follow him to his car. He could not even look at me. Never went out again. Story 13. This happened around 2015. Not sure what online dating is like now, but you could still get a serious date on Tinder back then. I lived in Amsterdam at the time, so lots of tourists on Tinder to avoid. Though I matched with an expat from the US, a filmmaker like me. We went for dinner in a small nice bar I go to regularly. Turns out he was a tourist after all. And as many tourists in Amsterdam are, he was stoned and well on his way to become drunk too. He had a grip on himself at first, but as soon as we had ordered our food and he got his first beer, his voice level got increasingly loud, and I started getting embarrassed. He wanted to split our dishes 50-50 so he could taste various things. I told him he could try a piece of my fish and chips, but I was not interested in splitting our whole dishes. As soon as the food came out, he was like, "Sue, can I try a piece?" And before I could answer, he just went for it and grabbed one of my 2 pieces of fish with his bare hands. He was so unhinged, half of my fries flew from my plate right onto the neighbor's table. During dinner, he kept talking, louder and louder, about his mental issues from being in the army, and it seemed like he was having some flashbacks too, which he tried to push away with more and more beers. The staff was starting to give me "WTF did you bring in this time?" looks. All the time I was basically flabbergasted about everything that was happening, and tried to do damage control and keep the whole thing as civil as possible. As soon as we were done with the main course, he asked me if I was into finding another girl somewhere, so we could have a threesome. Oh, and what I wanted for dessert. I just tried to get the waiter to give us the check as fast as possible so I could get out. When we were outside, he asked if we could get some ice cream. I told him this was not going to work out. He seemed surprised. Story 14. Met her at the train station and walked back to her parents' house. They were watching Strictly Come Dancing, and me and her sat on the other sofa, and it was a very awkward silence. She finally convinced them to let us go to her bedroom, and I made a cringe face when I sat on her bed and did not realize I was facing a mirror. To this day, I do not know if she saw it. We then watched a movie while sitting next to each other, and I got to watch myself awkwardly stroke her cheek with the back of my hand in the same mirror. It still haunts me to this day. Story 15. I asked a friend of a friend out to dinner. It was supposed to be an easy date, no pressure, just hanging out, so I booked an outdoor table at a restaurant on the water, Intracoastal Waterway in Fort Lauderdale. Florida is always warm, except for that night, which was in the 52nds. She also decided to dress up, so wore this nothing of a dress. We got there, they were booked out, so couldn't move us inside for at least an hour. I gave her my jacket, trying to be chivalrous. As we get our appetizers, I'm so cold that I'm chattering, but telling her it's fine, I'm good. Completely warm, keep the jacket. We stayed about 15 minutes, then ended up at a Denny's. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.